Joe talks about Joe. And now, your host, Joe Slepsky.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to Joe on Joe. It is me, your host, Joe Slepsky, and we are back this week for a very special episode. Why is it very special? Because Christmas just happened. And what's more special about Christmas than G.I. Joe? Or what's more special about G.I. Joe than Christmas? I think we all agree that Christmas was that special G.I. Joe time. You know, that was the you saved up months and months of goodwill to go through the Sears catalog and circle all the G.I. Joe toys that you wanted and all the figures that you wanted. And for me, that was my absolute joy. You know, I super, you know, superficial. I get it. But you know, you're a kid and there's just, those are the things that give you joy. So, hey guys, if this is your first time joining us, welcome to the show. This is Joe Slepsky. This is the podcast Joe on Joe, where we go over every episode of G.I. Joe, the cartoon in sequential order, episode by episode, season by season. We did Sunbelt, we did DIC, we even did Extreme. And then now we're going through the comic book, page by page, panel by panel, issue by issue. And we are rounding out to G.I. Joe 154. Now, some of you listeners, you may go, man, I remember hearing like issues 54 through 154. But what about those first 50? And you know what? Those are actually, the majority of those are, well, actually all of them are, but some of them were shared in the feed. The majority of them actually were done for our Patreons. So if you want to help support the show, you can go to patreon.com/JoeOnJoePod, and you can help support the show. You can also, while you're on the internet, why don't you head on over to Joe on Joe Pod at Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. Say hello. In fact, as we're doing this right now, we are streaming live on Instagram. Say hello, everybody. And that's a new thing I'm doing tonight. So I just decided to stream live on Instagram as we're recording this. But say hello. And if you're listening on Instagram, I guess, and you're hearing this for the first time and you've never seen this show, subscribe to the show. Just in your iPod catcher. Any podcatcher should have the show. And listen, if you're on a podcatcher and you're like, I can't find Joe on Joe, tell me about it. I will make sure to get my show on there. I try to get my show on all the platforms. And listen, while you're on there and you're rating and reviewing, I need you to go follow the Movies in a Meal podcast. They're a fabulous sponsor. And without them, the show won't fly. So please give them a listen. Listeners, I know what you need in your life. You need more podcasts. And you also love movies. So why not do a podcast that's about not one movie. It's about not two movies. It's about 3 movies and a meal. I'm talking the Movies and a Meal podcast. This show is great. It's brought to you by Keith, Brad, and Ben, and each week they bring a new movie to the table, which they all discuss as a group. And it's not, your highfalutin movies. It's What We Do in the Shadows, The Fantastic Four, Rise of the Silver Surfer, and Out of Sight. It's Bad Education, Ghost Rider, and A View to a Kill. It's X-Men Last Stand, Queen Sugar, The Mandalorian, and Major League 2. They are a lot of fun to listen to. You guys know Ben. It's our friend Ben Penseriga. He was a guest on Joe and Joe. In fact, Ben was the very first remote guest that I ever had on this podcast, so he's always got a special place in my heart. I'm really digging this. I just started listening to it last week. It is a lot of fun. They bring a guest in. The guest, I listened to their Heathers episode. They were joined by Kelly, and she went in depth on her favorite movie, which was Heathers, and it made me want to go watch Heathers to watch with them. I really dig it. So guys, find them out there at Movies and a Meal, Twitter, Instagram. Their website is moviesandameal.podbean.com. They put out 1 episode a week. Give them a listen, guys. Support them. Let them know Joe on Joe sent you. I don't think you're going to be disappointed. It is quite entertaining. And now back to the show. They're really the best. They've been with me for multiple years now. And they've been on this whole journey of of covering the G.I. Joe comic book, which we are doing today. This is, of course, Joe on Joe Illustrated, and we're covering issue 154. And it's, it's an issue that is an issue of G.I. Joe, but it doesn't feel like an issue of G.I. Joe for a lot of reasons that we're going to get into. It might as well be a random toy comic tie-in issue of G.I. Joe. Not that it's not competently made and things like that. It just doesn't feel like G.I. Joe, which, of course, it wasn't written by Larry Hama. And so what we're going to do actually today is we're going to spend a lot of time looking at some of the differences of this comic book, of why it just doesn't feel like a Larry Hama written G.I. Joe. So it'll be fun. So I hope everyone had a great Christmas and a great Hanukkah. Whatever holiday it is you celebrate, I hope you guys got a whole lot of great, good G.I. Joe goodness. For me, that was always a big morning, man. I got so many pictures of me just surrounded. I should dig those out. I know we digitized them a few years back. I should try to go through those and find them and share them on social. Just flanked by the red, white, and blue boxes of G.I. Joe. And for me, one of the best things about it was putting the toys together. Actually, it's like I was a big model kit kid, but it's like they were almost model kits, but they weren't. Like they were like a step. You were just a factory. We were just all factory workers, is what we were. But it was like putting together a model, And I loved putting the stickers on. I always put the stickers on. And if I ever got a sticker that went in the wrong place, like I made a mistake with it, and later on I would look in the box and realize that this no step sticker wasn't supposed to be there. It was supposed to be on the other side of the of the fuselage, and I put it in the wrong place because I was rushing it. I would always get bummed out. So much so, recently I was putting together one of those Creo like Korean Lego kits, and one of the stickers they had for the Cobra stickers, I put it actually accidentally in the wrong place, and I personally got so frustrated, and it brought me right back. I've forgotten how frustrated I would get when I was a kid, and I was like, oh no, I put it in the wrong place. It's never gonna, but yeah. So yeah, I always loved it. I always loved putting the stuff together when I was a kid. So that was fabulous. And I certainly saved all my instructions and my blueprints. I think I still have those because when I played the sad bugle noise, sold my vehicle collection probably 15 years ago now. I didn't have the blueprints with me. I didn't know where they were. They were somewhere, but they weren't with me. So my vehicles and stuff were just sold sans blueprints. And then a year or two later, I was cleaning some other stuff at my house, and I did find the blueprints. So I actually still have the majority of my blueprints. So, hey, if you bought a G.I. Joe vehicle from me circa 2006, 2007, through eBay, reach out. I might have your blueprint. Now, before we get into G.I. Joe 154.
You were saying?
That's right, Stalker. This is our favorite segment where we look at I say favorite, it's really the only one, where we look at the other comic books and movies that were on the shelf or in the theaters the same month of G.I. Joe 154. So G.I. Joe 154 is cover dated November of 1994, and that is calendar. What is that calendar? September? Yeah, September of 1994. So where were you in September of 1994? Because you were probably stopping at a comic shop picking up G.I. Joe 154. I know I wasn't, because I had stopped reading G.I. Joe probably after 151. I feel like I got to that point, to the issue 151. I think that was it. I don't think I got the issue with 152, the one with Joe Colton. I don't think I got that off the stands. So 154 would have been like the second or third issue of G.I. Joe that I intentionally missed and at that point, in 94, at that point, in 9 years of collecting, something like that, 10, or 8 years of collecting, since or whatever it was. Yeah, I came on around issue 50 or something. So that was, listen, I was, we'll talk more about this next week when we get into the big 155 finale. I will dig deep into that psychosis of me thinking I'm responsible for it. But I did not get this on the stands. I got this as a back issue. And it's funny, it's because we are talking about comic books at the time. As I'm reading this now, which is probably literally the second time I've ever read this comic book, the spines on my copy are poor. You could tell that they weren't done well at the printer, and you could see that just by the Well, I think what happened is, I think the insert, which is a personalized X-Men comic book order form that you could order, I think that threw off the stapling of the spine, because there's no other wear on the book. It's just that these staples are barely hanging on. There's one that's completely out, and the other one is on by a thread. So that leads me to the next thing as a collector, as I'm reading this, and I'm going, well, man, now, geez, like, it's like I said, the second time I read this comic. So I don't know that I noticed it the first time. I don't know, maybe this happened in my possession, or maybe it was like this when I first bought it, because I had bought it secondhand shortly after it came out. But still, it wasn't off the rack. So do I replace this book, even though it's not one of my favorite books? It's G.I. Joe, so it's one of my favorites. But it's certainly probably the worst episode, like the least. Like my least favorite issue of G.I. Joe, like probably of all of these 155s, just because it doesn't feel like one, which we'll talk about. So do I replace it because I want a better copy, and not in a kind of that CGC collector mentality of like, I need everything to be a 9.8, otherwise I'm going to be a bummer, I'm going to be depressed. Not in that kind of way. More in a just in a like a general, like in the back of my head, always knowing that I got a loose cover on 154. If I spend a little money and replace it, then I'll just feel better and be able to file that away in my collector brain, that OCD part of me. Because otherwise this is gonna live in my brain that I always need a better copy of 154. So those are the questions. Anyway, we're doing you were saying, and what was on the rack on Marvel Comics this month? Guardians of the Galaxy 54, they're dealing with Spider-Man and what happened to Spider-Man. Remember this iteration of Guardians of the Galaxy, the original, this technically not, this is actually technically kind of V2, but this iteration, the classic old school one, it takes place 1,000 years in the future. So it's a lot of legacy stuff. So in this, on the cover, you're looking at Peter Parker's torn up old red and blue costume, which is something like a legacy that they hadn't dealt with in Guardians at that time. So they're finally addressing his legacy. So that's interesting. I love future comics and stuff like Legion of Superheroes, and I enjoyed Guardians. I did not read it at the time. I got it. Actually, I bought Guardians of the Galaxy as a complete run on eBay. It was one of my very first purchases, probably in 1990. It had to be 1999. Maybe late 98, early 1999. I bought an entire run of Guardians of the Galaxy on eBay. And that was, this was literally when you had to send a check to someone. So I had to write a check, drop it in the mail, wait a week for them to get it, wait a few days to see that they cashed it. They had to wait a couple days to make sure that check cashed. Once that check cashed, then I had to wait for them to, send me the check, or send me the package in the mail. And I don't believe tracking was a thing then, or if there was, it was like real expensive to do. So then you had to wait to see if it showed up on your doorstep. The early eBay was wild, man. It was really wild. Another really good book I talked a little bit about last week, because we were dealing with the X books that had the prelude to it. But it's Generation X #1. This is important to G.I. Joe fans because in about 25, 30 issues, Larry Hama would take over and start writing it. I believe this is Scott Lobdell doing it right now. But the biggest thing on Gen X is that Chris Bachalo art, and it's gorgeous. I don't know if it's Bachalo or Bacalo. Pardon me for mispronouncing that, but Bachalo, who is just a banger of an artist, and really, really does some really distinctive, high quality stuff. And this was the first time I ever remember seeing his work. Certainly, I'm sure he had some stuff before this. But Gen X kind of blew everybody away, and it's great. It really is. It's really a fun concept. It's getting back to the roots of the X-Men, like I talked about last week a little bit. It's what sucks is that the name is so tied into the time period that as a team, I don't think we're ever going to really get another successful Generation X book. Like you can have X-Force books, you can have X-Factor books, you can have obviously X-Men books. But Generation X is just so tied into an actual period of time that unless it's the book itself is just about like, now you publish it, it's about getting old and, being in your 40s as an X-Man. if you called it Generation X, then that would be appropriate. So I don't, I think it'll be hard. I think it'll be hard to ever see another like actual ongoing Generation X book. That's really about like current X-Men stuff. But this is great. The book was fun. The book was a whole lot of fun. The design on these characters also was really what stood out for most of them. Between Skin, who at the time he was really a newish, I mean he was a new character, but he was, it was the new wave of freaky mutations that someone like Morrison would really ping off of then a couple years later. But the X-Men kind of had not gotten away from it, but they hadn't really dug into it that much, in dealing with new actual physical deformity mutations. So you got someone like Skin, whose skin grew too much and he could control it, but it was his skin that was elastic, not his body, his bones or anything. And so like to draw that, you had to be really specific. And then you had someone like Chamber, whose power blasted a hole in his chest and his face, who just had this nuclear furnace sitting in his chest that, had wrapped up like a mummy, and then he would expose it and it would be this energy blast, which is just a wild concept. And that's the kind of concept that feels like it's, and this is just, who knows if this out came out. That feels like that's like an artist first concept, or at least like the idea of just a living nuclear furnace. What would that look like? Like it's so artistically forward versus, like a high concept, delicate imagining. And Skin was, or Husk, I'm sorry, Husk was even cool. Skin, we talked about Skin. Husk was great too. One of the Paige Guthrie, I think, who would shed her skin, rip her skin off, and beneath it would be another layer of skin that would have a different absorbing man-esque quality. So it could be stone, it could be diamond, it could be concrete, whatever was needed to solve the crime at the time. So it's a little bit like Dial H for Hero meets, I guess, who else would rip their skin apart? I don't even know. So it's kind of like Dial H for Hero, but only for dermatologists. So, and then they were smart to tie in Jubilee with it. Obviously, much in the same way that Kitty Pryde was the crossover character that brought you into the New Mutants. Jubilee did the same thing here for the X-Men. M. Monet, I like her as a character, actually. I like what they've done with her. She's just this super arrogant, like she's kind of like the female Namor. But I do think that it was between her and then that, I think it was Husk, Penance. Her and Penance, that whole connection, that I think that was a real mess of a story. That was like that Penance was actually her sister, and her sister. It just, yeah, that was a lot of just being convoluted for convoluted's sake. And then there was, who else was there? Husk wasn't. Oh, Sync. That's the other guy. That's who I'm thinking of. Who's now back in the X books too, which I like. And I like him. I like that he's back in the X books. I like that storyline they did with him in the Weapon X thing, where he was down there with Laura Logan and stuff. I like his ability, and I liked him in the book too. But they killed him off eventually. Spoiler alert. And then there was the big dude. There was the big guy who was like, because every team needed a big guy at the time. I forget what his name was. He was okay. But yeah, so it was interesting. Yeah, Gen X really was interesting. So yeah, Larry Hama fans, make sure you read his Gen X stuff. What else we got going on here? Oh man, X Factor 108. This is the Peter David run, but this cover is all-timer. And I want to say it's Steve Epting. Let me just verify that. Yeah. Steve Epting drawing Mystique in front of a wall of skeletons. All-timer. Absolute all-timer. And this is actually, this isn't Peter David. This is written by John Francis Morris. I don't recall what the storyline was. Peter David had left the book then. Interesting. Yeah, Peter David had left the book, so I apologize for that. But this was when they were really government, this from the Peter David era, when they were government, working for the government and worked tied in closely with like Freedom Force and stuff. So Mystique started being a regular in the book, and this cover is just absolute all timer. I love Steve Epting's art. If you're not familiar with it, think Winter Soldier. That's his biggest thing that he's ever done, and probably one of his best stuff, but like his Captain America stuff is just all time great. Speaking of great covers too, the cover to X-Men 38, it's Gambit versus Sabretooth. That's a great cover too. It's a great angle on it by Kubert. Yeah, there's oh, this is a neat book too. This will be the last thing for Marvel. Strange Tales #1. Marvel was really trying to get into these like boutique, after the success of Marvels, these boutique painted things, and Strange Tales is one of them. We talked about Ruins, I know, recently. They did a Tales to Astonish, and this is like a painted high concept thing, where it's a little more, I believe the take on it was a little more real world and a little less fantastical, kind of almost a horror tinge. So if you ever see these painted Strange Tales, and then I believe there was a Tales to Astonish, Ruins is one of the ones I'm thinking of. Later they would do Marvel's Eye of the Camera. There's a couple other ones that I'm thinking of that kind of fit into this mentality, where they were trying to do these boutique, like if they were doing them today, like if DC were doing them today, they'd be like those DC Black labels, what they would be. I don't know what Marvel would put them under today. Marvel probably wouldn't do them today. So, but I don't know. But yeah, but they're neat. And they're an artifact of the time that I don't think get enough love. So it's a fun book. So
You were saying?
I was saying, Stalker. So we're going to look at the comic books from DC Comics that were on the shelf the same month as G.I. Joe 154. First book that oh boy, that's two books that stand out. Wow, it's a solid Batman month. Okay, so we got a lot to talk about here. So, Batman Adventures #25. It's Batman and Superman teaming up. I think this is the first Superman appearance in the Batman Adventures comic book, based off of the meeting of Superman and Batman in the cartoon. The cover is absolutely iconic. They've used this image artwork for a ton of stuff, like promotional wise. It's Batman and Superman both standing back to back, with their arms crossed. It's a great cover. And then you get over to Batman Adventures Annual #1. It's got the Joker and it has Harley Quinn. I think this is Harley Quinn's second cover appearance, maybe her third cover appearance, because she first showed up 12 issues ago in Batman Adventures 12. So this might be her third, but it's Batman, it's Joker, it's Harley. It's a good book, and this is a collectible. This is a collectible piece. This one's been going up in value a little bit. And then the other massive book this month from Batman is The Legends of the Dark Knight Halloween Special #2. And this is the second Jeff Loeb, Tim Sale collaboration on Batman in their like Legends of the Dark Knight Halloween specials. They did the first one was a Scarecrow. This one is the Mad Hatter. And then they do one called Ghosts, I believe. And then that leads them into the Long Halloween. So these are the books that they start doing annually. And then DC Editorial's eventually like, hey, we love this. Do you want a series? And then they said, let's just do this, Long Halloween, which turned, of course, into Long Halloween and Dark Victory and Catwoman When in Rome. And it launched its whole thing. And, unfortunately, that's it. Tim Sale passed last year. But what a talent and what a collaborative energy those two have together. So if you've never read these Batman Legend of the Dark Knight Halloween specials, they've absolutely collected them. I was looking at it this weekend. It's called I think it's called Long Halloween prequels. They're now branding them as, or something like that. It had something about Long Halloween on the cover, but when you looked at it, it was actually these prequels, and it was all these collaborative stuff. So really, those are fabulous. So that's a strong Batman month. Green Arrow '91. I think this is the first appearance of Connor Hawke. He's certainly being teased on the cover. If I recall, Connor might have been in the book as just Connor, and this is his first time outing as Green Arrow. Memory serves. I apologize for not getting that 100% accurate. But let me open the link. Maybe it says like first appearance Connor Hawke. I love Connor Hawke. I was a big fan of his run. Oh yeah, I'm correct. It's his first appearance as Green Arrow. he was in it just as Connor. And this is the first time he puts on the Green Arrow. We talk about Will Rosado, who was drawing some of the G.I. Joe stuff. He did he was like half the art team on Green Arrow when it was Connor Hawk for a long time. If you've enjoyed any of the Will Rosado G.I. Joe stuff, you should check out this Green Arrow run. Plus, the Connor run itself is really refreshing. It's very different from the Oliver stuff. I love his costume. The Connor Hawk costume is all time. It's so well done. Yeah, like Eddie Fires, they give him a CIA handler. He's naive. Like, this is a great reboot, but still without rebooting Ollie, this was a great reboot to second generation. I loved what they did with Connor. Then that led to that fabulous JLA issue, which where are we at with Justice League these days? Justice League, yeah, we're almost towards the end of Justice League. Got a little bit to go, but almost toward to the beginning of JLA. But there's that fabulous early JLA issue where it's Connor alone in the satellite, and he has to take down, I forget what the threat was, but he has to take down the threat, and he only has access to his dad's old trick arrows because Connor doesn't use any trick arrows. So it's awesome. If you've never read the Connor Hawk stuff, I really recommend it. It's a lot of fun, and I think the artwork really holds up. Manhunter #1. So this is along the next generation in a long history of Manhunters from DC. So Manhunter, the name goes literally back to the Golden Age. And then, Simonson revived it in the 70s in Detective Comics. And then in the 80s, Ostrander and Yale did their Manhunter series. And then, and the Manhunter / before the Ostrander Yale stuff, Manhunter was a, what was he? The Buccaneer, the Privateer, I think, in the Justice League. Same character. So the name Manhunter is I believe a copyright, kind of a DC needs to renew the copyright. Let's put it that way. So they need to keep it in print. So this is an iteration of Manhunter that very short-lived, and you see it used as punchlines, but it was actually decent. It wasn't terrible. I believe the art's by Vince Giorano. I'm going to find that out in 1 second. That's off the top of my head. And we are, Stephen Grant, who's great. Vince Giorano did the artwork. Underrated. Short-lived. I think it only ran 12 or 18 issues. And then it would go dormant for a while. And then eventually it would come back as, I think the next iteration was Mark Andreyko's Manhunter. I think this killed Manhunter for a few years, but issue #1 is on the stands this month. What else we got? Spinning Out of Zero Hour. They're relaunching a lot of stuff, right? We talked about that last month too. That Zero Hour was a reboot for things. So you get series like Primal Force #1, Rebels '94, which was the spinoff of Legion '94, or would have been '93 or whatever year it was. So this is turning the L.E.G. Legion book into Rebels. Same kind of concept, but they just needed a refresher. It was fun. I liked the Legion book, but it didn't last very long. They've tried to bring that back in a couple forms, and it never really sticks. I feel like that one's just going to be kind of stuck in the sands of time. So here we go. Starman #1. The best book on the stands. And we know issue 0 was kind of the start of the series, so this technically isn't really the first issue, but it's Starman #1. My favorite series. I was on a reality show a few years back. They brought in James Robinson. I got to meet him, got to chat with him very briefly. That's a whole different story, but it was all about Starman for me. Starman's just seminal and amazing. If you've never read Starman, you're missing out, and I genuinely mean that. Like, it's a piece of literature. It is fabulous. Especially to be honest, especially if you're a dude, like if you're just a young man of our generation, it's really written from the male perspective and about like father-son relationships and things like that. It's and responsibility and what it means to be a guy, a guy with some juvenile tendencies, maybe, I guess you'd say, not stunted growth, but yeah, like Jack Knight really starts with doesn't want a lot of responsibility, and he has to figure out what his place in life is, which is something I think our generation, going back to that X-Men talk, that Gen X stuff, I think that's something we all dealt with. I think, or at least it was a very common thread amongst us. We didn't have a unifying thing that thrust us all in one sort of similar direction. And so where does life really, where your choice is going to take you in your life when there's not a major outside force directing you? Or in Jack's case, there is a major outside force and he's resisting the call. So yeah, Starman's fabulous. I cannot speak highly enough of Starman. So yeah, wow, we've palavered for a while.
You were saying?
So now we're going to look at the movie theaters, and we're going to see what was in the theaters September 1994. Wow. First week, really just bad movies. I can't say I recommend any of these. I don't know if I've seen any of these. A Simple Twist of Fate with Steve Martin. Never seen that. Good Man in Africa. I kind of remember that. I remember having Sean Connery in it. Never seen it. Trial by Jury. Never seen it. What Happened Was. Never heard of it. Yeah. So that brings us to September 14th. Now let's look back real. So that is all in the shadow of, I guess that's in the shadow of Natural Born Killers on the 26th of August. But yeah, that was a rough couple weeks. But we get to Quiz Show on September 14th, which was a big movie, and it was a big release at the time. Robert Redford directed it, so Turturro, and it went on to win. I believe it won Academy Awards. I know everybody got nominated for it for sure. So, and it was great. It's a great movie, and dealing with the actual scandal. So Quiz Show is really good. So that's on September 14th. So that's September 16th, man. Stop the presses. Greatest time travel movie of all time, Time Cop. Yeah, let's just say this. I'm going to box myself in here. In the top 5 time travel movies, Time Cop, Jean-Claude Van Damme. And I say that saying like Back to the Future, we'll just say they all count as one movie. We'll say franchises then. Terminator, certainly, although Terminator has more time travel loopholes than Time Cop does. Time Cop did an awesome job of, like, I loved the you can't touch yourself stuff. Like the same matter can't be in the same place, even though technically every 7 years, was it 7 years? I think you're all the cells of your body are replaced. So it's technically not the same matter, but still that was the rule. There were some fun time hijinks in Time Cop. I'm going to stand for it. I loved Time Cop. Time Cop caught my imagination as a youth who loved time travel stuff. So that's September 16th. Oh, wow. And then this is huge. Shawshank Redemption came out on September 23rd. So, now this is the movie that no one saw in the theaters, but we all have since seen it 150 times since then. So if you did see Shawshank in the theaters, raise your hand. I certainly didn't see Shawshank in the theaters. But I don't think anybody did. But we all love Shawshank Redemption. It's amazing. We also have Charlie Sheen film Terminal Velocity. That I've never seen, but I remember it. But I'm glad I've never seen it. But you know what though? Listen, I'll watch it. I'm not gonna say I'm not gonna watch it one day, because I'll totally sit down and watch it. Oh, and then here we go. Final of the month. The month redeems itself. So yeah, you know what? With Shawshank being obviously Shawshank, the brilliance of underappreciated brilliance of Time Cop, and then you get one of the most brilliant films. Definitely biographies. Absolutely. I gotta say one of my top 3 like biographical films of all time. Ed Wood. On September 30th, Ed Wood was in the theaters, guys. I don't know when the last time we revisited Ed Wood by Tim Burton. It's wonderful. It's brilliant. It introduced me to Ed Wood. I had never heard of him. His films are terrible, but they're wonderful. He is and you see more like documentary style stuff about him, and it glosses over things, and what's the right word? Not objectifies, but fantasizes certain things, and it's not the word. It glosses it up for Hollywood, but it is a wonderful, wonderful movie, and a really great performance by Johnny Depp. Martin Landau won the Academy Award for it. Everyone's great in it. Bill Murray's funny in it. Jeffrey Jones, huge creeper in real life. Don't get me wrong, huge creeper. He's great in this movie. George the Animal Steele's awesome in it. Patricia Arquette's great in it. Lisa Marie. Like there's, Vincent D'Onofrio plays, I want to say Howard Hughes, Orson Welles. It's I love it. I love the movie Ed Wood. I remember first time I saw it, it was really revelatory. Like I wasn't sure. I'd wanted to see it, and then I saw it on VHS, and I was like, this is really, really great. And then I never saw it again for years. And then it finally, I think I finally got a DVD of it or something, or somehow I'd gone years without seeing it again, and I was like, why don't I watch this every year? Because it's just such a wonderful movie. I love Ed Wood. If you love Ed Wood, let me know. And so now,
mass is ready.
That's right, guys. G.I. Joe 154. We're talking about the penultimate issue of G.I. Joe. We're talking about the issue that in just one short issue would be the last issue. We're talking about how many times can I say issue until I get back to the computer tab that I just closed accidentally. Here we go. Cover by Amanda Connor, whom I'm a big fan of. She did the earliest work I've seen from her is Suburban Ninjas. Something, it was a parody on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. It was done by Marvel. It was called like Suburban Mallrat Housewives, Karate Housewives, or something like that. And I found it at a con, and I was like, I've never even heard of this movie. Of course I'm getting it. I think I tweeted at her about it, and she, she's not proud of it, but it's like she laughed or something like that because she hadn't seen that book in forever. So this is real early for me for Amanda Connor work. It's fun. We're talking cover here. It's fun. It's definitely a little. It's Roadblock jumping out of an exploding airplane. That's fun. He's supposed to be carrying a bazooka. The bazooka doesn't look like a bazooka. It looks like a telescope with some kind of open rack system. Like, I don't understand what that is, so I'm not sure what that's going on. And then the girl, because they give her the red hair, I think you think it's Scarlet. Obviously, I totally thought it was Scarlet. It's not Scarlet. It is just some Cobra airline attendant, as we'll see in the book. But it's fun. It's fun. I like the explosion behind the logo. That gives you it actually gives you a sense of, it focuses your import onto the character instead of the explosion. Flip it the other way. The explosions for something, like let's say the logo was at the bottom and the explosion was at the top and the logo kind of was obscuring the characters. Then visually that would put you in a place of going, oh, whatever that plane was the important thing. But in this case, the plane explosion is almost an afterthought. It's featuring Roadblock. Roadblock's the lead here, and we have that on the cover. It says featuring Roadblock, so that's cool. He does get a cover treatment because it's not just like Roadblock. It's Block is stylized. It's got some kind of weird, and I say weird because it's strange, purple and blue striping going on the word Block. I don't know what that's all about, but it's there. Yeah, and Amanda Connor, if you're not familiar with this stuff, she's primarily been working on Harley Quinn for the last decade. She's been writing it, and she does a lot of the covers. She did draw it for a long time. It's so funny because, drop a name here, we were at Golden Apple Comics this weekend. Golden Apple Comics, best shop in LA. And one of our quasi-regular superstars that stops in, Mr. Keanu Reeves, was in there. And he was looking at stuff for his book, Berserker. And if you haven't read Berserker, by the way, it's great. And he was picking up some issues of that and some stuff that came out with that, and also a bunch of other comics. He's a really nice dude. I love his stuff. I'm a big fan of his work. But then he's just a nice dude. Like, he's great, and he's so down to earth, and he's so chill. And there were a few customers in there, and they were really respectful of him. He was really respectful with them. Like, a couple of people asked for pictures, and he just was absolutely gracious. He signed a bunch of stuff. And this was on Christmas Eve. So this just really, really nice dude. I can't wait for John Wick 4. We're up to 4 now. And his girlfriend is partner, or however you would phrase it, Alexandra Grant, is amazing. And I had the opportunity to help her shop for some stuff in the store. And she's super nice, and she's super chill. And we were chatting about a whole bunch of stuff. And I was telling her about Amanda Connor and saying that, you have to look her up. One, because she's our generation, like she's been around comics for a long time, and her stuff has only gotten better. And then I started showing, and I was like, yeah, she's done a ton of. The reason I'm sharing this is she's done Harley Quinn stuff, and I went to the Harley Quinn, and Amanda Connor's name is on there, but she's only been writing it, so I couldn't find any great Amanda Connor illustrations. I was only like cover images. So I left her with a please look up Amanda Connor. I can't find any of her sequential stuff right now, but she's amazing. So I hope that Alexandra did just that, because Amanda Connor's really great stuff, and she's married to Jimmy Palmiotti, who is just one of the most prolific inkers of our generation, and 2 talented inkers of our generation, and 3 influential inkers of our generation. So much of the comics of this generation and stuff that, the last 20 years that we enjoy, really pulls a lot from the Palmiotti style, and his line and his influence has been huge. And he's a genuinely good dude. So so support Amanda Connor and Jimmy Palmiotti, guys. Anyway, man, we're going long today. We're going long. So there's the cover.
Yo, Joe!
Now, Flying the Unfriendly Skies. Peter Quinones script and Ernie Steiner on the art. Crusher Wallace did the inks. Shy on colors again. Vicky Williams letterers. Mike Lackey edits. And Tom DeFalco editor-in-chief. So broad strokes on this one. I like the artwork. It's fun. It's a little... it is G.I. Joey. It's not, the story itself is not based on anything G.I. Joe or Cobra. So there's not a lot of traditional landmarks that we would expect to see in a G.I. Joe book, vehicles, that are landmarks being like touchstones for the art that kind of you look at and go, well, how do they draw a dragonfly? How do they draw a hiss tank? How do they draw a viper? How do they draw, Roadblock in costume? How do they draw snake eyes? Those are kind of like the landmark touchstones for me personally. When I judge G.I. Joe artists, like those are the kind of points where you go, okay, that grounds me into it being a G.I. Joe story. Because we don't have any of that, that also works against this story as far as feeling like a G.I. Joe story. The other thing is the script is, in my opinion, it's overwritten. And it's overwritten in a licensed property perspective. And I'll explain what I mean by that as we go through. But generally what that means is it's just over-explained to the point of making sure the youngest kids in the room understand everything, and there's not any mystery as to the deeper relationships of any of the characters or of what's going on. I do subscribe, as I've said many times, the theory of you should write a comic book, every comic book, that it's someone's first book, so they give them at some point in it an entry point for them, with very few exceptions to that. I think like 4-issue miniseries, like if you design it to this from the start, I think some of that stuff's okay to get by with it. But something like this, a one shot, absolutely should be written for newcomers. But there's a lot in here that just is written very much in a style of the time for Marvel. Actually, more of, I'm thinking 80s stuff, but licensed comic properties or licensed like toy properties, licensed properties, period. Kid-friendly books. And that shows through in this, which is something we don't normally see in G.I. Joe. You know, G.I. Joe always writes up. G.I. Joe always writes a little older. You know, it writes for, it writes for the teenager. I think I always feel like G.I. Joe writes for the 13-year-old, and this feels written like for the 10 or 11-year-old. And I know it doesn't sound like there's much of a difference, but I think there's kind of a difference here. And for me, one of the good things is when you're 10 or 11 and you're reading and it's got an elevated prose to it, it's aspirational. It gives you a place to look up to. And so like you're reaching to get there. When you're 10 years old and you're reading it and it's written to the 10-year-old, it just feels like it's just pandering. But that was my experience. I see some of the successful kid stuff today, and we have a big kid section of Golden Apple, and I don't know, it sells a ton, so what do I know? But there was something to me, there was something that was inspiring about it being aspirational. So it being not a book that I would let go of when I turned teenager, but I would actually age into, which is what G.I. Joe always was. And then eventually, there's usually an out clause, unless you're one of us, which means you're 47 years old and still collecting classifieds. Anyway, we got Roadblock in a big old cowboy suit, rushing to the airport. Now, Roadblock, I want to say, not a cowboy. If I believe, wasn't he Louisiana? Let's see. I'm sorry, I didn't think to look this up sooner. But Mississippi. I apologize. So they got Roadblock in this Texan garb, which doesn't fit Roadblock. That threw me off right away. He's from Mississippi. So South, true, but I don't think they dress like this in Mississippi. But maybe he's trying to look. Maybe he's hanging out with Wild Bill a little, and Wild Bill is influencing him. But either way, Roadblock's running late for a flight.
Yo, Joe!
He loses his hat, which is probably for the best. Well, you know what? Maybe. Okay. I just had a thought. I'll hold on to it. But he's trying to catch a plane, and that's a great way to start it. Like he's in the middle, he's in a hurry. But as he's getting into the airport, there's a van outside, and it happens to be a Cobra van. And there's a guy in there that says, "Hey, isn't that guy a Joe?" And someone else says, "Yeah, I recognize him from the files. His name is Roadblock." It might be the perfect time to capture a Joe, so they're going to call in. And so apparently Cobra runs a non-Cobra secret airline. That's what we learn in this issue, which is awesome because that once again shows Cobra has the best infrastructure around. They have a better infrastructure than G.I. Joe. They were able to support a functional airline which has gate privileges at, did they say what airport this is? Whatever airport this is, it has this isn't, they're not hijacking a plane. This is a Cobra run airline who seemingly runs normal routes everywhere. And as we learn, they use that to smuggle equipment all over the country. But that's a lot of money and a lot of infrastructure. G.I. Joe is asleep on the job. But this is what I mean when we get a little more of a entry level stuff here. So the guy calls into the front desk and he says, some female Cobra agent says, "I can tap into all the airline reservation computers and scan for any known Joes and their known aliases." She says, "Roadblock, here he is, Marvin F. Hinton. And this is, he specializes in infantry, heavy weapons, attended Escoffier school in France. This guy's a freaking 2-bit cook." So it's it's got that. Larry would have just given us its Roadblock. You know what I mean? It's issue 154. And this has that. I'm introducing an action figure for, like this feels like it's written as an issue of the cops, the Future Fighting Force Team cops. And we need to give the dossier of this specific cop that's having this specific adventure. You know what I mean? There's a little bit of a difference there.
Yo, Joe!
Now, Roadblock is now upset because he's been bumped off a flight. And he says, I've got a chili cook-off contest to win and big prize money to collect. Now, he's holding a can of Tex-Mex chili, which will come into play. So maybe I'm thinking he's cosplaying for this chili cook-off. Like he's flying to somewhere in Texas where this rodeo outfit would be appropriate. That's the only thing I can think of. But his flight's been bumped. And this lady says, oh, wait, you've been reassigned to Swan Charter Airlines. And Swan Charter is the Cobra. Now, they're not even trying to do that Broca Beach Arbco thing. So that's the other disappointing thing. Now, maybe that's how they fly under the radar. Because maybe someone in Cobra Hierarchy was like, if we stopped calling everything Broca, we'd stop getting busted. I don't know. But this plane apparently is full of Cobra people. Because before Roadblock joins, we get a listen up, guys. We're taking a Joe on board. And he's clueless that he'll be flying on a plane full of Cobra agents. Take no action against him until we're in the air. And due to the pressurization of the cabin, don't use your guns. We'll be handing out tasers to everyone. We also have a nice variety of knives available for your laceration pleasure. That's very funny. I like that. So there's some deft writing in this. There's some moments where I enjoy it. It just feels overwritten for what we're used to, I think. And also it doesn't get into the type of certainly doesn't get into like that Larry Hama nitty gritty military jingo talk that he gets into. But we see that Roadblock's been upgraded to first class.
Yo, Joe!
Which will never get old as far as like flight humor and airline discussion. Like that's so weird that that's a thing that's never gotten equalized. Like flying first class to this day is still a first class thing. It's still something that's out of reach for most people. I've never flown first class. I'm never personally going to spend the money to fly first class, and nor have I been in a position to like have someone fly me first class. But like it's you'd think after all these years, someone somehow would figure out a way to normalize that. But it's still a punchline. So he's loading. This is also very Passenger 57 too. So last month we had Terminator. This is very much Passenger 57. So he's this is fun. She's the waitress stewardess says, right ahead, sir. Welcome aboard Swan Charter Airlines. I'm sure that after you fly with us, you'll never use another airline again. That's ominous. That's hilarious. Roadblock's in his seat. So they are going to Dallas. So that does explain so Roadblock is in cosplay. Okay. So that explains itself. He says, sort of. So it's sort of, maybe he's going outside of Dallas, but he's in a chili cook-off contest, which he's going to win. And he gives us a little bit of a MacGuffin, because I've got the tastiest, hottest chili powder known to man or beast. Grandma Hinton has more secret spices than that Colonel from Kentucky. And we see he's holding Grandma Hinton's chili powder. Now, does Grandma mass produce this? And if so, then how do you know someone else isn't using Grandma Hinton's chili powder? Like, Roadblock, is it a secret or is it not a secret? So the plane takes off. And in a sign of the times, Roadblock wants to use one of those credit card machines to make a phone call on the plane. You remember that? You swiping your credit card and making phone calls?
Yo, Joe!
And I'll say this. I like the pencils on this. Good, really nice facial acting. Some of it's a little cartoony, but it's very expressive. So I think that makes up for it. So like in this image, this guy's face is like, it's a little out of whack. The guy that's about to stab Roadblock with some B.A. Baracus style sleep meds. But it's really distinctive. Like that guy's face doesn't look like anyone else's face. You know, Roadblock's face 100% looks like Roadblock's face. Like you know, it's so, pardon me, going back to Ernie Steiner does a really nice job with this. I really think so. So the guy's trying to inject Roadblock with a random syringe, and he gets a face full of Grandma's famous chili powder. So that chili powder was a MacGuffin for about a half page before it gets thrown into his face and used. And that's when Roadblock rips out of his seat.
Yo, Joe!
And remember, they're already in the air. So now everyone pulls out their knives. And this is where we get a little, a little neat teeth gnashing here. It's a Cobra Craft, you fool, disguised as a civilian airline. Everybody on board is Cobra. Now sit back down. This taser's got enough juice to curl what's left of your hair. That's fun. I don't know why you get pick on a man for being bald. So Roadblock makes his move. And you know what's this also, this art style, it's got a Kevin Nolan vibe to it. It's got a real Kevin Nolan vibe. It really does. If you guys know Kevin Nolan's work. It's got like a toe hold in Mike Mignola stuff, but a real foot in Kevin Nolan's world, which I appreciate. So it's Roadblock fighting the stewardesses with knives and tasers and cans of Coca-Cola.
Yo, Joe!
Now, this, out of nowhere, a Viper shows up. And again, a distinctively drawn Viper, so I appreciate that. But he's gruesome looking, and the proportions are kind of wild. But it fits the style of this. So Steiner, what did you say, Ernie Steiner? His style's got some real proportion. I don't want to say issues, because he's doing them on purpose, but like there's it's almost cartoony in some regards, where he's putting a lot of motion into people's bodies, and it starts from the first page, the way Roadblock's running. And in this case, what we're talking about is the 24 inch times 8 Python. This Viper comes in flexing like Hogan, and his arm is ridiculous, but it works. And he's flexing with his right arm, and he's punching Roadblock out with his left. And he when does he introduce himself? Oh, later on, someone calls him Igor, because this guy is going to be known as Igor. He's got a long ponytail. He's definitely balding up front. I know the feeling. Rest in peace, hair. And he's going to take on. So he's the physical match for Roadblock. So that works. So Roadblock pulls some knives, or he's going to pull some knives. And Igor has a gun, which they were told not to because of the pressurization issues. However, Igor wasn't listening and fires the gun.
Yo, Joe!
Swoosh. They all get sucked out of the airplane. So rest in peace, that stewardess. She's dead. And she's the redhead from the cover. So that cover lied. She didn't make it. And this is where some of the, I guess you would have this in a Larry thing, but it says like his bullet hit the emergency door window. It's, and then it's, being sucked out, even though we see the bullet hitting it and we see the window cracking. So it's drawn. And then we still have a random guy whose head is just in the panel just to explain things. I honestly wonder if that was an editorial edition where they said it's not clear what's happening. I think it's clear, but because this guy's head is just in there, and then there's I would bet you that actually might be a thing that they said, hey, show a guy's head in here so we could put in expository dialogue. So Roadblock's holding on for his dear life. I think it's an ample illustration of depressurization, as we saw in like every third action movie in the 90s was all about depressurization in 90s and 80s. As soon as you went up in a plane, you knew there was going to be depressurization.
Yo, Joe!
Now at 30,000 feet, now this is a little bit where I go. This was the page that really stood out as like a little bit overwritten. So the caption says they're at 30,000 feet, which is fine. But then there's a word balloon, a dialogue balloon that's going to the pilots, or it's actually, I think it's misplaced. I think it's actually, whoever placed it seems to be pointing towards Igor, but I think it's supposed to be the pilots. And it says, we can only survive a few minutes at such an altitude. In order to survive, we pilots must point the nose downward and hope the plane survives the sickening plunge. It's, it's a little... I feel like Larry would have found a less expository way to write that, regardless of where the word balloon is pointing. But I think that's supposed to be coming from the pilots. Like, we pilots must, like that point is that's... Anyway, but then this is where I think they thought it was coming from Igor, because Igor says, even if we all die, I want the satisfaction of knowing my bullet killed you first, as if like he was the one saying that in the previous part. So there's a little bit of miscommunication here. Absolutely is. So Roadblock throws a microwave at him, which is pretty great. I'm here for that. And he gets sucked out of the plane. Like, he does get sucked out of the plane. So, but it's a good movie villain that always comes back. But I'll say this, I don't understand. He gets sucked out of the plane past Roadblock. And, but anyway, so the pilots are like, we got to pull up. We're at 10,000 feet.
Yo, Joe!
Now, my understanding, and again, this is from all of the action movies, is the rushing air is just from the depressurization. And once you get to a certain altitude, you can fly with the door open. It's just that, so that like once the pressure normalizes, it certainly would be windy and terrible, but you can fly it like that. So like the constant suction is only temporary until they can get them, to a very certain altitude. Anyway, Roadblock is now in the food storage area. And again, this is one of those planes that's so huge, like a Passenger 57, it's a really good movie. It's got Steven Seagal in it, and it's got Kurt Russell, and it's really good because Steven Seagal dies in the first 15 minutes of the movie. They're going on the plane. Executive Decision. That's the movie. It's a really good movie, and it's great because Steven Seagal gets sucked out of an airplane and dies. But like that plane was huge, and that like there were all these many layers and levels to it. And remember the plane in was it G.I. Joe Special Missions 1 where they all broke into it? That was so massive that they could like sneak around a plane. I don't know that I've ever been on a plane that big. Every plane I get on, it seems like if there's just no place to. It just seems so. The concept of like Roadblock being in a different storage area of the plane is weird to me. But he's where the food's being stored. Anyway, a couple other Vipers show up. The Viper costumes are recognizable as Viper costumes, certainly, but they're not on point. Like, they're not super Vipery. There's certainly no helmets, and then they look more like they're just wearing like generic kind of. They were like if someone were describing a Viper costume and you had to draw it by someone's description of it. The other thing here is Roadblock now is out of his cowboy outfit, and he's just, so that's a shirt I guess he's ripping off, or I see what's happened here. He wrapped a bunch of Coca-Cola cans in his big fluffy cowboy shirt. And he has put on a parachute, but he doesn't really say that he's put on a parachute. So he's wearing a backpack, so that's his parachute, but we don't really see him do that. So all of that kind of jumps the narrative gun, but that's okay. You know what happens? That's what happens in the gutters. That's what comics are all about. It happened in the space that we were worried about the airplane depressurizing. So he fights these dudes, smashes them in the face with these cans of Coca-Cola.
Yo, Joe!
And he's threatening to snap this man's neck like a chicken bone. And we realize that he says there's nothing special about this mission. This plane, because Roadblock's like, is this a plot to get me? This plane is how we move Cobra weapons packages around without attracting attention. So conceptually, this is a great issue. This is like uncovering deep Cobra infrastructure, which is awesome. So Roadblock says like, the Joes need to know about this, etc. The pilot's running around with guns now. Now everybody's got a gun. Now nobody cares about depressurizing the plane. But everyone's got their Uzis out. So forget about those knives. Guns ahoy.
Yo, Joe!
In the cargo hold, it's a full HISS tank. And, I guess just crates of weapons and explosives. We're going to find out, like, the next page. It's explosives, too. So Roadblock realizes the only way out of this plane is to get it to land. But Igor's little decompression stunt, he thought that would force them to land, but it's no dice. They're actually, now he's going to try to cut the fuel lines. At least that's what he's thinking about doing, but no dice because the Vipers are here. And they're attacking. And now we actually have some Vipers in full Viper helmet gear. So they look a little more Vipery.
Yo, Joe!
And that's when Roadblock does the absolute classic action movie move of whatever you're hiding behind happens to be explosives or nuclear or a bomb or something like that. And in this case, it's a box labeled explosives. And so he yells that to them. They don't care. They keep shooting. And now Igor shows up again. He says, Igor, you old blowhard, you survived the wind tunnel. So the only way I can think if he survived is as he went out the plane, he grabbed the plane door with his hands. And then in a part of the movie we never saw, he slowly clawed his way back in, right? I mean, if you're the hero, you do that. If you're a Bond villain, you do that. So Igor's a Bond villain because he's certainly no hero. So apparently Igor survived, which is wild, but he survived. He gives us a tremendous axe pun on this page. And when he does, he hits a box with a rocket launcher, an anti-tank rocket launcher.
Yo, Joe!
Gets exposed, which Roadblock picks up right away. So now Igor and Roadblock are fighting again. Where's your bravado now? No more table. Think of that. This is the no more table guy from Die Hard. That's really what this is. Or I mean, no, it really is. It's Hans, not Hans. Carl. Tell Carl his brother is dead. Yeah, it's Carl. What's his name? With the long hair that he eventually. I'm gonna kill you and I'm gonna eat you. That's really what it is. But it's him mixed with the no more table guy because he's or the guy from. The guy in Die Hard 2, who's at the end of the conveyor belt, and he's gonna kill Bruce Willis, and Bruce. Yeah, so it's all a combination of that guy. Anyway, Roadblock, he says it's got a real got a little supremacist stuff here going on. He's like, meet your physical superior, Marvin. Where's your bravado now? It's a little supremacy going on there. And Roadblock says, where's my bravado? It's where I always keep it, in my fists. He's like, that answer your question, Mr. Physical Superior? And he just ducks, it just completely decks Igor in a nice move. So yeah, there's a little Proud Boys Oathkeeper undertone here going on. And I appreciate good for you, Quinones, for adding that little layer here. I mean it.
Yo, Joe!
So Igor seems to be knocked out. Marvin is just shooting randos that enter the cargo hold. So now, okay. So now this is where I get confused. So I don't know what backpack he had on before, but now he's putting on a parachute backpack. So what was his other backpack? Was that just his? Oh, I guess he was he had a backpack when he checked on the plane. That's what it was. So yeah, so he had a backpack on the first issue, and he grabbed it. It must have been his carry-on that he grabbed, and I think that's important because I think we need that when it comes to Chile at the end of the story. So I think that's what we're doing. So we're lots of backpack tracking. But I'll tell you what. Let me put it to you this way, kids. Regardless of what you think about this comic book, they put more thought into tracking Roadblock's backpack changes than Rob Liefeld put into tracking Snake Eyes' weaponry, swords, knives, and overall costume in that Dead Game comic book. That they did more thought than he ever did for any of his work on that Dead Game book. Throwing that out there. I don't mean that as a random slam on Rob Liefeld. I don't. I mean that as at least they're doing the work here, because now he looks and he sees, okay, there's a parachute and it's on the box. He's going to put it on himself. So he kind of jury rigs it onto himself. Like it's not tied on normally.
Yo, Joe!
So he's wearing 2 backpacks. Have you ever worn 2 backpacks? It's terrible. Have you ever tried to sit in a chair with a backpack on, regardless of how full a backpack is? It is terrible. Backpacks are great until you have to do anything but carry them on your back. So now this random lady, one of the Cobra ladies that's left, she's near the cargo doors. So she opens the cargo doors. Or actually, he opened the cargo doors. No, she opened them? So wait. So she's by the cargo doors, but then later on they say he's opening the cargo doors. We have to stop him before he jumps. So there's that's weird. So we needed to show that there were cargo door controls, and then we needed to show him near them, but she's near them. So it's a little like spatially, it's a little off. I'm not going to fault them for that, but this gets into the writing contradicting the art, and then it might be because they thought people didn't get what was going on because she was seen near it. I don't know. But anyway, it does matter. I like what she says here, because one of the Vipers says, he opened the bay doors, we have to stop him. We're in the air, he's got no chute. And her response is great. He's a G.I. Joe, you idiot. They adapt, improvise, and overcome. That's actually a great line. A really great line. And that one line might elevate this whole issue, to be fair. Really, to be fair. So I'm going to rethink this a little bit. That one line is really, really great. And as Roadblock says, the doors are locked in the open position. A quick sprint is all that stands between him and freedom.
Yo, Joe!
And I don't mean Spirit's bird. So now Roadblock's just fighting the captain. And this is the guy, this is the guy who originally recognized him and called him in, because he says, I'm the one responsible for bringing you on board. It's a little Air Force One-y, at this moment. Get off of my plane, No one wags a finger like Harrison Ford. Get off of my plane. And then this is a little, like real expository here of, so you were the travel agent responsible for getting me on this fabulous flight, huh? Like it's just like trying to tie it all up instead of it just being Roadblock duking a dude at the end. So Roadblock's gonna fall, gonna crash, but he has a better idea. He says, "You see this handy dandy missile?" He goes, "I know how to arm this particular model manually. And instead of dropping it into a tube, guess where I'm going to shove it?"
Yo, Joe!
Next panel is this guy getting rocketed off the ship with this missile strapped to his back. Now, it appears Roadblock shoved it down the back of his coat and into his pants. But essentially, he shoved it up his butt, proverbially. Or, not literally, I guess, but proverbially. Yeah, anyway. Which is a great sequence of panels. That's really fun. Narrative-wise, the look on Roadblock's face, guess where I'm going to shove it, which is really great acting on the pencil, Ernie Steiner's part. Roadblock looks like there's a look of, this is going to happen. I'm not happy about this, but you're not going to stop this from happening. And then it just cuts to this guy getting rocketed off with a rocket literally in his pants. That's kind of awesome and kind of great. And he yells, "Somebody tell my wife I love her," which is funny. And then we get a little unneeded. It says, "Don't go to pieces, Cobra." And boom, as there's an explosion. So it's got a little of that sloganeering, that Passenger 57, always bet on black, Schwarzenegger, I'll be back kind of stuff. Catchphrase. It's got a little catchphrasey thing going on, and like Bond would do, So yeah, this does feel like a little bit of a Bond adventure. It really does. But now Igor's back again. So Igor shows up, gets Roadblock in a headlock, and Roadblock says, "Screw it, we're going." He knows he has a parachute strapped to him, And he grabs a rocket launcher and just jumps.
Yo, Joe!
Not for nothing. There was a advertisement for Pinnacle Football 94 supplies. So it's trading card supplies. And, or guaranteed scarce premium. No, they're actually, I'm sorry, they're not supplies. They're actual cards. But it says Pinnacle Football 94 supplies are so tight you can hear the mylar straining. And there is a horrific photo of a football player. The idea is that he's breaking the mylar on a plastic bag, or like on a like a plastic pack of cards, like mylar cards. It's horrific. It's got that Freddy Krueger face stretching the wallpaper look to it. I had to take a second. Really, I mean this. Look at this. If you have this comic book, look at this. And actually, I forgot we're on Instagram. So Instagram, check this out. This is what I'm talking about. Can you see this? It's kind of horrific, and I had to give it a double take because it's I didn't understand what's going on. Is this football player suffocating? Like, what is he a monster? I don't know what this is, but this ad ain't it.
Yo, Joe!
Oh, I think we hit that already. So, if you flip pages, they're still falling in free fall. Got lots of speed lines here. Orange sky, and I like the use of the orange sky stuff. They've used it. I think they've kind of used it throughout when they've needed to. The sky is always kind of been an orange hue because a blue sky. Roadblock's wearing blue jeans. The Vipers are in blue. The plane is gray blue. That's gonna blend into the sky. So they've chosen to do like an orange palette for the night for the sky, which is great. I think it works really great. I don't know if it's night or day, but I think it works. I think it makes the rest of the colors pop. So that's a good choice all throughout the book. And Igor's asking, like, what's you gonna do? And Igor actually gets a face full of what I think I used to play when we'd play G.I. Joe. I don't know if you guys did, but I was always worried about the guys who were on the vehicles behind the missiles. So if you were on like a Cobra Stinger and the Stinger, the missile rack rotated and launched missiles, and you were standing right behind them, like on the rack, like on the like the jump seat, and you took a face full of missile blasts. I was always worried about that. Or on any one of the Killer Whale, or any one of the vehicles that had open missiles on them. I was always like, how are these people riding these vehicles and not getting blasted in the face with missile exhaust? And that is what happens with Roadblock here. He fires a missile at the plane, and the exhaust is what knocks Igor off to his death.
Yo, Joe!
And here we go. Missile right back at you. Blowing the plane up. Roadblock in his parachute going down to safety. He says, I can't wait to tell the other Joes what a blast I had on my vacation. Wah, wah, wah. This is a fun little bit here where it says, like we get a moment with the Cobras right before they die. There's a guy because the missile's like heading, like he's like spot on. It's going right back into the cargo hold. And there's a guy that yells, a missile, run. And there's another Viper that just says, to where? There's no place. And then they all die. So that's pretty great. So Roadblock murders an entire plane of Cobras.
Yo, Joe!
Now we get a little bit of a heavy dialogue here. With any luck, somebody will notice that the Cobra plane dropped out of the sky. Somebody will notice there's a giant forest fire that's happening where he blew it up with a missile, and you just shot down a charter airplane on U.S. soil. Roadblock, I think someone's going to notice. Just throwing that out there as a conjecture. I think someone noticed, but now he's upset because he's never going to make it to Dallas for the chili cook-off. As much as he hates this canned stuff, now this is the callback to the Tex-Mex chili from the first few pages. He's going to have to he's going to have to eat the chili, and the look on his face is a look of disgust and resignation of this is it. I'm going to have to eat this chili. So it took a few hours, and we get Ace again. Again, this is the next, another appearance of Ace that doesn't look like Ace. At least, like the traditional Ace design. It's just his helmet, so I guess we can't say it doesn't look like Ace. But it says he's not in he's not in the Sky Striker. He's in the Ghost Striker X-16. He's flipping his wings, and he sees it in Roadblock belches, like all good Tex-Mex chilies should be doing. I hope the rescue team can do something about this heartburn. Oh, my aching stomach. Wah, wah, wah.
Yo, Joe!
That's exciting, and that's it for G.I. Joe 154. I'll have some thoughts on that in a second. We do have post box from the pit, and we get it starts with a letter from the editor, and they're not saying what the next issue is. They're not, they're saying check out next issue, heads up, but they're not really saying next issue is our last issue. He says, hope you enjoyed our double guest stint here. Larry Hama returns next issue for an unforgettable story. We've got letters here from Paul Britt out of Fayetteville, North Carolina. Michael Alex Kawa out of Las Vegas. The Cobra Liberation Front. Fred Collins, president. That's great. His letter was, why must every Cobra be a loser? Why must every Cobra campaign end in disaster? We want a Cobra leader who will win and bring an end to the Joes. I think it was sent from Mar-a-Lago. Thomas Wheeler out of Tucson, Arizona. We've seen him before. Heather McNair out of New Zealand. I think we've seen her before too, right? Malcolm Williams, Tacoma, Washington. Brian Murphy, Fairview, New Jersey. It is a 2-page post box. Becky Churchman from Tucson, Arizona as well. Paige W.H. Brousseau from Flint, Michigan. That one sounds familiar too. Sean Carley out of Lebanon, Pennsylvania. And Lee Ann H. Fansler, withholding her address because 30 years later, she doesn't want a middle-aged guy to be reading it on a podcast. And they mentioned Planet of the Apes to talk about the future of G.I. Joe. He says he's thinking about the ending scene of Planet of the Apes when Taylor has Dr. Zayas tied to a log. Taylor asks Zayas, what's out there? And Zayas says, you might not like what you find. On that cryptic note, and he says some thanks to some people. And that's the biggest hint we get that next issue is the final issue. So you might not like what you find. Guys, G.I. Joe 154, upon this dissection, I liked it better than I liked it upon the read. I think it's very much like the previous issue. It's kind of doing an action movie parody thing. In this case, Passenger 57. Let's see, when did Passenger 57 come out? I feel like it was already out in the theaters. Because I feel like I remember us talking about that on the You Were Saying segment. Passenger 57 came out, 1992. Yes. So that's what this is. They were doing their version of Passenger 57. It's okay. Like I said, it doesn't feel very G.I. Joe, but it's Roadblock. It's a Roadblock solo adventure. I love Roadblock. Represent that. It's fun. It's not super G.I. Joey. And I think we know why. It doesn't have a ton of Cobra stuff, doesn't have a ton of G.I. Joe stuff in it. It's just a person on an adventure with one element of Cobra. But listen, points for the establishing that the Cobra is running this underground smuggling thing, which is wild. They got such an infrastructure. Really, really, really do. It is wild. Anyway, so that's it for now. Listeners on Instagram, thank you all for following. I hope you guys enjoyed watching this. This is how the soup gets made. Is that what it's called? And so we'll see you next week for 155. Now you Joeing. It's half the battle.